From 1966 to 1968, dozens of American vessels that included powerful destroyers, cruisers, and even battleship raged the North Vietnamese oceans to sink and hinder the flow of communist freighter ships. As the Vietnam War grew in complexity and seriousness, and the United States offered more assistance to the South Vietnamese, the tasks assigned to Navy vessels in the area grew in number and difficulty. Operation Sea Dragon lasted for 2 years, and Task Force 77 of the U.S. Navy ultimately fired 13,976 rounds, sank 483 targets, and damaged over 1,000 more. Supply flow. During the Vietnam War, there were 3 main routes through which the North Vietnamese transported their personnel and supplies to the south. The first and most widely known route was the Ho Chi Minh Trail, an underground network of roads and trails that traveled from over the northern mountains into the south. The second route went through the rivers and roads of the North Vietnamese coastal plain south of the Red River Delta, and worked as a logistic feeder system for the subterranean channels. Finally, the third route went through the coastal waters of the Gulf of Tonkin, located off the coast of northern Vietnam and South China. This path was just as crucial as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The US government knew that the North Vietnamese were dependent on the vast quantities of supplies smuggled across South Vietnam's shores and waterways, and in 1966, Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Command, Ulysses S. Grant Sharp Jr., forwarded a plan to hinder the flow to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The operation was first called Traffic Cop, and Sharp asked for naval service interdiction below the declared Vietnamese demilitarized zone. Following months of political debate, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara finally approved sending operating destroyers above the 17th parallel in October of 1966. As agreed, counter-battery fire against coastal artillery was permitted only in self-defense, and all North Vietnamese civilian fishing craft would be immune from attacks. On the morning of October 25, 1966, the captains of destroyers USS Mansfield and USS Hanson received orders to, quote, patrol the North Vietnam coastline from the demilitarized zone northward and destroy North Vietnamese waterborne logistics craft carrying arms and materials to enemy troops in the south. Before dawn, the destroyers had already sailed north towards the 17th parallel, ready to patrol and strike all vessels that carried arms and supplies to the enemy forces in the south. The mission was then renamed Operation Sea Dragon. Sea Dragon. At 5 a.m. on October 25th, the Navy's 7th Fleet destroyers and a group of cruisers that also included Royal Australian Navy vessels entered North Vietnamese waters, beginning a new naval phase of the war. The vessels were to intercept and destruct WBLC, or WBLCs, waterborne logistic craft that ranged from small sampans to large steel-hulled self-propelled barges, as well as the remaining Soviet coastal lines of communication, such as radar stations, boat repair facilities, bridges, and surface-to-air missile sites. After sailing for almost 5 hours through communist waters, the 2 warships closed to 14,000 yards offshore by mid-morning and engaged with enemy ships near the city of Dong Hoi. The coastal defense started firing batteries at them at 9:51 a.m. USS Mansfield and USS Hanson quickly turned to the open sea and engaged with the counter-battery fire of their aft 5-inch guns. After defeating the enemy, the destroyers escaped unscathed and returned fire at other targets. By sunset, the 2 American ships had obliterated several logistics craft and fiercely returned all enemy fire. The following day, North Vietnamese representatives delivered a complaint to the International Control Commission at the United Nations about America's escalation of the war. Despite the protest, Operation Sea Dragon continued for almost 2 years. During the first week of the attacks, the destroyers assigned to the operation managed to sink 101 watercraft and damage another 94 with their 5-inch projectiles. Meanwhile, counter-battery fire accounted for another 426 shells without losing a single ship or sailor. Although day-to-day life aboard the ships was harsh and stressful, the soldiers' morale remained higher than in most other ships due to a combination of frequent naval action by crewmen and the immediate results from their efforts. According to The Sea Dragon Strikes Again by author Lawrence M. Greenberg, shipmate Tom Harper later recounted that, quote, "When we would light off the smoke pot, one person in the aft repair party had the job of smoking a cigar to use for lighting the pot. Every time we lit the pot, the propaganda machine in Hanoi would say that we'd been hit. I know they claimed to have hit us several times. It was kinda cool knowing that we had cheated them out of a hit." The operations force, part of Task Force 77, usually included 1 cruiser and 4 destroyers divided into 2 separate task units. However, up to 2 cruisers and 12 destroyers were assigned at the height of the attacks in May of 1967. With the disruption of Wiblick traffic, the North Vietnamese opted to move their supplies through their second available option, using the roads and rivers of North Vietnam's southern fringe. As a result, the American government extended the scope of Operation Sea Dragon to include the bombardment of inland logistics and military targets. This series of bombardments against North Vietnamese vessels was not without opposition, especially under continuous surveillance by enemy radars. The ships from Sea Dragon came under fire from numerous well-camouflaged batteries of coastal defense artillery, while the aircraft were continuously attacked by surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft guns. A massive force. During the 1967 to 1968 Tet Nguyên Đán, the Vietnamese Lunar New Year, both parties agreed to a truce, and over 1,300 North Vietnamese logistic craft traveled the waters in only 6 days. During the same period, and while celebrating the New Year, Vietnamese and Viet Cong troops launched the Tet Offensive, one of the largest military campaigns of the war. The U.S. forces were taken off guard, as it contradicted President Lyndon Johnson's administration's claims that the Communist forces were weak, close to being defeated, and incapable of launching an ambitious military operation. Because of this surprising attack, many Operation Sea Dragon forces were retrieved from the demilitarized zone to provide gunfire support to beleaguered units in the South Vietnamese 1st Corps Tactical Zone. However, as the situation stabilized, they returned to the hunt in the northern waters. By April of 1968, the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command ordered to reduce the functional area of Operation Sea Dragon below the 19th parallel, only 150 miles north of the demilitarized zone, as the number of Wiblick sightings diminished and the need for ships further south increased with the Tet Offensive. Despite the drawdown, the campaign continued through the summer of 1968 with shore bombardments. Between August and September, the heavy cruiser Newport News and 3 other destroyers sank or damaged almost 1,000 watercraft alone. On September 29th, USS New Jersey joined the fleet in the Communist waters. This Iowa-class battleship had been on a 15-year sabbatical since the Korean War and was capable of reaching 85% of the military targets in the north, with her 16-inch guns. During her first day, the battleship destroyed a supply depot in the north, a barracks area, several roads, almost 1,000 feet of occupied trench lines, and an anti-aircraft battery that tried to engage with a Marine F-4 Phantom while New Jersey and her crew lurked nearby. Communist gunners used to abandon the site as soon as they saw the vessel, instead of igniting the battleship's wrath. For a month, the world's only active battleship wreaked havoc in tandem with the rest of the Sea Dragon team along the North Vietnamese coast, successfully striking fortified caves, logistic complexes, watercraft, troop concentrations, and the famous Ton Hoa Bridge with her powerful 1,900-pound shells. Although waterborne logistics craft traffic was dense during the beginning stages of the operation in the north, with an average of 50 sightings per day, very few were being spotted during the early fall of 1968. On October 31st, 1968, President Johnson ordered a halt to all military operations in Vietnam, and the mighty Sea Dragon vessels withdrew from the demilitarized zone. While coastal interdiction and bombardment in North Vietnamese waters resumed intermittently during the following years, the attacks never reached the level of Operation Sea Dragon. Ending. In only 2 years, the task force of Operation Sea Dragon fired 13,976 rounds, sank 483 targets, and damaged over 1,000 others. Amongst the targets were watercraft, structures, bridges, trucks, storage sites, and radar installations. The North Vietnamese fired at the Sea Dragon vessels 169 times, with 38 ships receiving enemy fire on more than one occasion. However, despite the continuous effort and improved accuracy of their shore-based artillery, the North Vietnamese's coastal defense batteries failed to put any Sea Dragon ship out of commission. Ultimately, the operations forces suffered 5 casualties and 26 wounded sailors. Although Operation Sea Dragon didn't wholly stem the flow of enemy supplies and men to the south, it forced the Communists to divert a large part of their logistics strategy to less efficient land routes, such as the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which ended up becoming the most widely used track because of the Navy's interdictions. Furthermore, eliminating large-scale coastal deliveries forced the North Vietnamese to use tens of thousands of troops to defend the coast, use smaller inland rivers and connecting channels to transport goods, and carry loads of munitions and provisions through the mountains to get to the Communist forces below the demilitarized zone. Thank you for watching our Dark Seas channel. If you know of a story you'd like to see in a future video, please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified of our newest content.